Welcome back to another episode of Level Up Stronger, the podcast where we explore how to level up every aspect of your life. I'm Tiffany, your co-host, and as always, I'm joined by an amazing co-host, Ken.
Thank you, Tiffany. Hi, everyone. It's great to be back with you. Today, we have a very important topic to discuss, self-care and mental health. And what better time to talk about it than in May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Absolutely. Mental health is such a crucial part of our overall well-being, yet it often doesn't get as much attention as it deserves. So today, we're going to dive deep into the value of self-care, early detection signs of mental illness, and both natural and medical ways to treat it.
And for me, self-care is about taking intentional actions to care for our physical, emotional, and mental well-being. It's about creating habits to support your overall well-being. And this can range from getting enough sleep, eating nutritious foods, to exercising, to setting boundaries, practicing mindfulness, and even just taking time to relax. In fact, it's important to remember that self-care isn't selfish. It's about ensuring that we have enough energy and mental clarity to show up as our best selves in all areas of our life. If we neglect self-care, it can lead to burnout, stress, and even mental illness issues. And I actually talk about this with my clients quite a bit, Tiffany, about how self-care is not selfish, that it's self-love.
Yeah.
And that it's like I make the analogy, it's like you're like a battery, and you've got all this juice, right? And you got different things that get plugged into you that take energy, that flow energy out of the juice of the battery of yourself. But at a certain point, you've got to recharge the battery, or else it all just gets drained away if you don't do any self-care, and then you can't help yourself or anyone else.
Is it because it's not ingrained in us to be like, or it's seen that self-care is selfish, that we
Yes.
don't actually put ourselves in the equation? Because I think this is a problem overall across the board, especially for women, but I'm also starting to see it in a lot of young people. And when I broach the subject with some of my team where I feel like I can see the warning signs, right?
Yeah.
Of burnout and stuff like that coming. And having been in their shoes and having seen like how that affected me, like I try to have those conversations with them, but I think it isn't like they're not acknowledging, even in their current circumstance, even when we're discussing it, that there is a better way. So why is it
Yeah.
that we as humans, or we in our current societal state, are not accepting of the fact that we are allowed to put ourselves in the equation, not always first, because that's not always possible, but at least I can consider what I need in the equation, along with looking at what others need, or the company needs, or family needs, and all of those other things. But why do we take ourselves out of the
Absolutely.
equation?
I think we're taught that. I think we're taught as kids, it's better to give than to receive. You hear that a lot, right? And that we're
Mhm.
taught that somehow taking care of yourself is selfish. I think what happens is we see sometimes that I think people will do things to take care of themselves at the expense of others, which I think is then that what I consider selfish. However, the self-care part is really neglected a lot, I think, because of there's some kind of stigma, like there's a stigma around that somehow this is not the right thing to do, right? That somehow you're supposed to always put everybody else first. I think a lot of times we see negative role models in society too, that you see people who are very selfish or stepping over other people, taking advantage of other people, using other people to get things for themselves. And there's not a mutual respect. And then we start to associate that with self-care, which it's not. That's my take on it.
Doing things for yourself in the expense of others. If in the expense of others, it would be more detrimental for you to do what the other person wanted, is it not better for you to do something in the expense of others? You know what I mean? Like, because even that catches me, because I guess it's not black and white. A lot of times we're demanded to do things, or we're expected to do things, right, a certain way for someone else, or because someone else has an opinion. And it's not always in our best interest. And so
Right.
we're immediately seen as the bad person, right? If we don't do it according to what they want, right? But
Right.
it is more beneficial ultimately for us to kind of step outside of doing whatever is expected.
And I think there's a kind of a case by case basis. You're right, it's
Mhm.
not black and white.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's okay to do a little bit of a compromise that way if it's going to help out in a bigger picture. Like, for instance, not getting in an argument with somebody at the Thanksgiving dinner table over politics or whatever it might be. Rather than engaging someone, you decide to not say anything or to
Mhm.
redirect the conversation to a different topic. And while that might not be the thing that you really want to do that might be in your best, necessarily best self-interest. It's in the interest of everybody to create a more harmonious environment. And in that case, I think it can be worthwhile to not take that self-love care moment and nurture yourself by speaking your truth all the time. And I'm not saying lie, but I'm saying, I'm saying a weighing of the impact of what's going to happen one way or the other way on this.
The harmony of understanding what the people in your environment and the people you care about need, as well as what you need, and there's a balance.
Yeah. So like,
Or not harm balance, because we hate that
yeah,
the word balance.
right. Balance.
Harmony between
Uh,
what you
Harmony is
need
much
and what
better.
other.
Exactly. And finding that harmony with each other and within yourself as well,
Yeah.
because sometimes it's like you might not have someone who's very sensitive and you might want to say something that would be call them on what you see as maybe their bullshit, right? But at the same time, if you do that, they're just going to break down and start crying and they're not going to even hear what you have to say.
Correct.
So rather than saying something like that, you might find a way to, reframe what it is that they're speaking about in a way that makes them look at it in a different light without a direct confrontation.
Sure.
So that would be another way of handling something like that.
Well, I think that ultimately the reason why we spend so much time, and there's an entire month, in fact, dedicated to mental health awareness, right?
Yep.
Is
This month.
because I think we are starting to understand better today, like how much your mental focus and viewpoint has on the grand scheme of things, and how how well the entirety of your life ends up. You can see in someone's life who is always focused on negative and who is mentally stressed and burnt out and in a very negative mindset, everything in their life is going wrong,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It is very much a mindset because it is ultimately choice. And I'm not
Yeah.
talking about the mental health, like where you have chemical imbalances. I'm talking about like normal mental day-to-day decision. You are actively participating in the decisions that you're making, the how you feel, how you think, all of those things. I'm not talking about where you have legitimate chemical imbalances or some medical
Right.
thing going around.
Right.
Most people, that is not the case. I'm talking about like when you are mentally on a daily basis choosing negative every day in every decision and every viewpoint, your focus is on like negative. And I think that is what then leads you to go down that stress spiral more quickly, or to immediately end up in that place, or immediately end up in burnout. And I think that's a big contributing factor in the group and societal think right now, is that it's the sky is falling and mentally we are choosing to feel, think, and act in a negative way.
I agree. And that's just akin to feeding your body full of trash constantly, always
Yeah.
eating fast food and sodas and never drinking anything, any real water or eating kind of healthy food. And then you start to get sick, right? Because you're giving this horrible raw materials for your body to try to use to keep itself healthy. Well, mentally, it's the same exact thing with your thoughts, right? If you're constantly thinking negative thoughts, constantly the pessimistic, constantly looking at the glass half empty scenario of everything going on in your life, you're basically giving your mental health a bunch of crap to work with, and then you wonder why you start having issues that pop up, like feeling sad or down or feeling confused or reduced ability to concentrate or excessive fears or worries or extreme mood changes,
Yep.
withdrawing from your friends and activities, significant tiredness, low energy, sleeping problems. All these things are signs that you need to seek out help if they keep persisting, because you're basically toxifying your mental health.
Well, and mental health affects everybody, right? There's not just one age, gender. I mean, unfortunately, because of what has happened in the last several years in the United States, like I think there is a bigger dependence on chemicals to help with our mental health and all of, other
Yes.
ways and sources that are maybe not in our best interest to in the long range, right? And I
Right.
don't want to discount like the need for some people to be on chemical adjustments, right? Because
So
it is a very real thing. But
it is.
I think there
It
is
is.
there is just a quick transition into like, let's write everybody a script for whatever is ailing them, right? Before we look at what's the root cause of why the issue exists, right? And I don't
Bingo.
care what medical issue you're talking about. Like, we don't get to the root cause of why is it that you are feeling all of those feelings, because
Yes.
feelings are a choice.
Yeah,
And
and I
so
think
that
you're right.
worries me a little bit, like that we have taught the current younger people it just medicate it.
Yeah. Rather than dealing with the cause. Again,
So yeah, don't deal with it, just medicate.
we're treating the symptom and not the cause. And then
Correct.
of course it never gets better. It doesn't change because you're not addressing the cause. Why did this manifest in the first place?
Mhm.
What factors in your life, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual,
Yeah.
psychic, whatever, what factors are playing into this that make this manifest? And if you don't, unless you don't address those, that's the foundational core that everything else is stemming from. It
Mhm.
won't change.
Well, I think it's also really important that we understand the signs within ourselves, like when we're going through major issues, right?
Right.
Whether it's confused thinking, the inability to concentrate, worries, fears, anxiety, extreme mood changes, all those.
Yes.
It's not only about recognizing those in the people you love, but it's also recognizing those things in yourself and
Yes.
being in tuned to how you feel in a given situation.
Yes.
I know that if I'm in a situation now, and it hasn't always been this way, but I'm more in tune with how I feel and listening to my gut when I am in an anxiety state that I need to go take a timeout.
Yes.
I need to remove myself from the situation, and I need to stop and ask myself, where is this coming from?
Yes.
What is it? What external environment am I in that is making it difficult for me to pull myself out of that? Because I firmly believe feelings and thoughts are choices. So
Yes,
what
they
is
are.
it about the environment I put myself in that is sending me down that path? What thought processes am I running that are putting me in that area?
Yes, self-analysis and
Correct.
self-awareness. And a key thing you bring up here also, Tiffany, is that what I call breaking the state. You don't want to let that keep spiraling out of control when you start to notice yourself getting really anxious or angry or frustrated or feeling
Mhm.
really negative and certain negative thoughts starting to happen. It's so important to stop that in its tracks and to break that state and then allow yourself to give yourself a break from that, to step back from that. And
Yeah.
one technique I just wanted to share that I use with my clients a lot is to think an absurd thought. That
Mhm.
will break that state instantly, just like that. You're like, for instance, you got some negative thought train happening. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, what the hell? You're feeling really overly anxious. You just think about a giant ice cream cone falling on the Empire State Building,
Yeah.
or a unicorn pooping rainbow sherbet. As soon as you think that something like that, your brain goes, what the hell are you talking about? There's this short circuit that
Yeah.
happens. And then in that moment, you can insert a positive thought and start doing some more self-awareness work,
I
look, it's
think
like,
you could do
okay,
that for other people too, and paint a picture in the
man,
middle of a tirade, like
yeah,
of something absurd to kind of
say
help
something
them
totally
step out of
crazy,
it too.
right? Right. That's completely doesn't make any sense. All of a sudden, it's like, there's 10,000 clams that open and shut their mouths every two
Mhm.
minutes in the bottom of the ocean. They're like, what? What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah. Just
Good.
kind
Now
of
we can
carry
start
around some
talking.
zingers in your pocket to lighten the mood a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
That's right. That's the
Um,
value of humor, right?
yeah, 100%, 100%. I think
And
the times when I've let myself really spiral out of control too, it was like my ego got dinged, right? And then I needed to balance the scale
yeah,
on my ego being
yeah,
mad that it got like someone else did something to me
right,
that my ego didn't like. And
right.
so that you have to really be honest with yourself,
It's true.
and looking at like, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things that this person did that? It's not true.
Right.
Because I have definitely responded back to some of those times in my life in a way that now that I look back on it, I'm like, I really wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
I really wish I wouldn't have stewed.
I think we've
Really wish I
all
had
been
caught
there.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And also there's another tendency to happen the other direction of that is people will have that happen and they'll go into a victim mode. They'll start seeing
Correct.
that they're in
Yeah.
this powerless state, that they're a victim, that they're being, used or trod upon. If you notice these signs in yourself or someone you care about, it's important to reach out for help. There are various ways to treat mental health issues, both naturally and medically. So let's talk about some of the natural approaches first.
I think the biggest natural approach that I have found works best for me is meditation. I know there's additional things like definitely physical activity, getting out in fresh air, getting out in nature, to help reduce kind of some of those, signs of anxiety and just like taking a time out, practicing, mindfulness, maintaining a regular sleep schedule and all of those things. But the biggest thing that has worked for me has been meditation. I noticed that once I started meditating, and it's that quiet space and getting outside of your head in that quiet area, I have noticed that I do not let a lot of the just dumb shit and small things that used to bother me as much. Like I am much
So,
more kind of grounded than
yeah,
ever before I started meditating. I'm
so
not
true.
quick to anger anymore.
I found the same thing. It helps you to create inner peace and to cultivate that within yourself and recognize that that is not something that can be taken away from you by other people, that you have to give that away. So
Absolutely.
it empowers you in that process. I 100% agree. The meditation is really, really powerful. So I love that
The other
aspect.
thing I started doing recently is I got this decorative glass jar with a lid and I put it on the kitchen table. And every day I sit down and I write out like something I'm grateful for or a good memory for the day and I put it in the jar. Just kind of
Nice.
as a end of the day, focus on the positive things that are going on in your life rather than
Right.
all this thing, the shit show that sometimes we feel like we're living in. There is something good in every day. You
There
just
is.
have to
There's
look
something
for
good in
it,
every
focus
day.
on it, be mindful that there was something good. And a
Yeah.
lot of times I use that as a way to help get somebody out of their spiral. Like when they're spiraling and talking about nothing but negative crap, I just stop and I'm like, did anything positive happen today? Can you give me one positive thing that happened today? Like, let's refocus this narrative and this thing that, all of this like litany of stuff that you have going on to something more positive. Give me something to go with. What you're choosing to focus on from feelings and thoughts and actions are choices, right? And so
It's
I think it's
true.
vitally important to then remember that you can choose the alternative of that. You can choose to focus on something good. You can choose to focus on the positive things that happened today. You can choose to reframe a situation and find the humor in it.
It's all choice. It's our perspective and how what we were looking at a situation. And it's so important to recognize that there's that power within each of us to be able to do that at any moment, really. You know that saying about finding the silver lining around the dark cloud. That's exactly what that is. And there's so much truth to that. It's really powerful. I agree with you. The meditation has been one of the most powerful things for me as well, to start getting in touch with my own inner world and recognizing and my own patterns and things that I'm doing to myself that I can stop and have power over. And like I said, that my thoughts and my feelings are a choice that I'm making, that it's not just happening to me. That's a huge, huge shift. And like you said, also, practicing kind of mindfulness as well as can be good. Balanced diets help. Staying connected with family and friends who are supportive of you in
Yeah.
your life, that's also a big thing as well. So all those things help. And for some people, I think these natural approaches are maybe enough to manage their mental health.
Mhm.
However, there are times when medical intervention is necessary,
Yep.
and sometimes that can include therapy or counseling work or coaching work, which provides a safe place to talk about your thoughts and your feelings. And there's also medications that we mentioned about to help balance chemicals in the brain that when there is an imbalance biologically that is causing the mental health issue.
But I think it's important to remember that seeking help is not a sign of weakness, right? It's actually
100%
a sign
agree.
of strength. And so
Yep.
we actually at work, as part of our work culture, have started talking about like balance and harmony and mental health specifically on a more regular basis with everybody, because I think it's very important that we, because we do believe in a very family cultured company, that we are aware that people have things going on in their personal life outside of work that affects their work. And so
Yes.
we actually offer as part of our healthcare benefits, like they have a hotline that they can call, completely anonymous, a hotline. We don't know about anything that's going on, but I think through the health insurance, they offer a certain number of counseling sessions or therapy sessions or whatever the case may be. And I make sure a couple times a year that we remind people that this free service exists
That's
for all
awesome.
of them to utilize. that as an option to get the help that they need. But I also, as a leader, like if I can hear it in people's voices when they're
Yeah,
stressed out. So I try to stay
yeah,
very in tune with my team, and read the room. And part of that being able to read the room means I have to be very quiet internally and not let my personal mental clutter affect how
right,
I'm viewing what's going on in given
right,
situations. So I can hear, like when I have a project manager or an employee or somebody who is on that edge of like stress burnout. So I think it's important both that you're finding different ways and methods that work for you, but also if you are in a leadership position, that you are being mindful that you are partially responsible for making sure that as a group, everybody's mental well-being is in a good place. Because often if you have somebody who's struggling, misery loves company, and they
yes.
start to drag everybody down.
I think that's a great point about as far as being in a leadership position of any kind, or the coaching that I do, that you have to get your own self out of the way and really listen to what the other person is saying, and getting in touch with their worldview, what's happening from their perspective and how that's impacting them, their mental health, and in particular what we're talking about today. That's super powerful. And that's a really great way of leading, I think, as well, because it's inspirational. It also encourages everybody to grow in their own, like, their own personal way, and that you can help them in
And I
whatever
think
way that.
also, like, once you start realizing how to help your own mental health and well-being, and you start to adopt practices that work, you start to see the patterns that are evolving that get people to that point where you were on the edge as well. And I think
Yes,
it's important that you can then identify, okay, we definitely are headed into, I don't want the people who I lead to have to go through the same pain that I did, I guess is.
right, right. Yeah, it's about helping them find a bridge from A to
Correct.
B that's quicker than the one that you took.
Yeah, I don't want them in that valley and having to crawl back, the hard crawl out of that valley that you find yourself in when you
No,
slide down. And so the building that bridge, I think, is a vital part of that. And especially younger generations, if I can, because I don't think I had enough people who were personifying how to get out of that when I was coming up,
yeah,
because of the time I was, the early days of the, early 2000s, when I was really starting out as a young person in a career, like no one was personifying like mental health. We weren't talking about mental health.
right.
It was
What
seen
wasn't?
as something negative. We weren't teaching people resources to get past those things, like all of those things. And I think it's vitally important. But I think I would be in a much different place if I had had positive examples back then, or it wouldn't have taken me so
Yeah,
long to have figured it out.
yeah,
It,
yeah.
like, I could have maybe jumped over some of those pain points had there been some more positive examples on what to do.
And it's just now in 2024, it's just now starting to become more acceptable to start discussing mental health issues,
Correct.
just like people talk about physical health issues all the time.
Yep.
And you don't have to get super specific, but the fact that, it's part of our whole well-being is the mental health aspect of things. I think that's why it's so important that I love that we have a month that's focused on that, as far as just mental health awareness,
Mhm.
raising consciousness around that, and that it's okay, normalizing the fact that we all have to do things to maintain our mental health just like we do to maintain our physical health.
Yeah, and just a reminder, your mental health is just as important as your physical health. So taking care
Yes,
of your mind is a crucial part of leveling up stronger.
so true. That is right. So don't hesitate to reach out for help with yourself or with somebody else, and or encourage other people to do the same thing. There
Yeah.
are resources available, and you are not alone.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today on Level Up Stronger. We hope that you found this discussion helpful and informative. If you have any questions or topics that you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please feel free to reach out to us.
And don't forget to subscribe, to rate us, to review our podcast, to leave comments. Your support helps us to reach more people and spread the messages of leveling up stronger.
Take care, everyone, and remember to prioritize your mental health. Until next time, this is Tiffany
And this is Kenn
signing
signing
off.
off.